Hey everyone, welcome to episode 11, and this is part 3 of the 4-part series on hiring and developing your team. So this is Yang here with
Lee. Hi. I feel like I haven't seen Yang in a while. Yang's been on vacation. Well, he was on vacation, but we also were took us a minute to kind of regroup for this session.
yeah, you've been busy too,
Yeah,
right?
we have.
Well, it's like summer, summer
My son
schedule. We're
went to
trying to
camp, like overnight camp,
yeah,
which actually it's his second year, but either way, it's still like nerve wracking for anybody, for any parent, but especially moms. But it was so much I was like, I'm sending him for 2 weeks next year, which sounds crazy in my head right now. But I
yeah,
can't imagine I'm gone for 2 weeks, but it was so much driving. So the camp is like 4.5 hours away. And for listeners that don't know, Texas is huge. It's like driving across, you can it literally could take you as long to drive from where we're at to across the edge of Texas as it does to go to Canada. It's crazy.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah. So some other
12 hours to get across Texas is what I'm
yeah. Some
But
other
anyway,
sections you can cross through like 4 states.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. So anyway, his camp's really far. And so the first weekend we took him we went and made a weekend out of it, in San Antonio, which is, kind of closer to his camp, and then dropped him off and then drove back. Then I had to go back the following weekend and get him again, to pick him up. And that time I was like, I'm not doing a 4.5 hour drive in one day. So I was like, I'm going to break up the drive. So I went to San Antonio for one night, picked him up, and then went to Austin for a night. It was like the tour of Texas. I was like, I've been in my car entirely too much this week.
yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway, how was your cruise?
It was good. I didn't get the Hinta virus or whatever it was called.
Okay, so I was looking back at the episode that we recorded, that we were talking about, you going on a cruise and how I think must have been in the beginning of all that going on, because when I was talking about it on the podcast, I was like, wait, I don't even know what it's called, but it comes from rat ear.
Yeah.
First, right after that episode, it became more of a thing, right? And I think
Yeah,
I guess it's since kind of died down, but
I didn't tell my wife about it.
you just didn't tell Tina anything.
Yeah. But she totally turned into that Disney cruise mom, right? Where
I watched the video you sent me.
where in the beginning she's like, cruise? No, it's like a petri dish on water. And
yeah.
she's like, what if we crash, or what if we get stranded in the ocean and all that stuff? And then as it gets closer, she's like, oh, did you know they have this? And find out about magnets.
Decorating the doors, buying all this stuff to
dude,
something or another.
She made custom magnets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So she did our a picture of our family, AI version, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then she created our own custom, family magnet. And then while she was making ours, she ended up making one for all of our friends. So she made a family one for all of her friends.
Really dove into the whole culture of it. She was like, okay, I read about this and now I got to do all these things for the cruise. And you're like,
yeah, well, cause I heard about the magnet stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, that's kind of fun. And then just knowing how my wife and my daughter are,
yeah,
I was like, they're totally going to want to do it. So then I told them, I was like, hey, if we're going to do it, let's prepare before. Cause I don't want to be buying, a bunch of magnets at this store on
400x price of Disney.
Yeah. So I'd rather, and then, you have more selection options and stuff when you look beforehand. And then that turned into, oh, let's do our custom, our own versions instead of just buying it from Amazon or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
So then they ended up going crazy on that, and they created a whole bunch of, it turned out nice. And then our friends were, very thankful because she made custom, and it looks like them. Right.
Yeah, that's cute. Yeah.
Well,
and also listeners, for those who don't know, I hadn't talked to Yang, and when he got back, I was, asking how the trip went, and noticed that not only did Yang do a 6-day Disney cruise, he then decided it was a great idea to go to the parks
Oh yeah.
after the cruise. I was like, "Are you insane?"
Yeah, that was kind of a YOLO like add-on at the end.
Yeah, but man, y'all are
Because we're like, all right, well, we're right there,
already
you know.
here. Let's just go.
And my son, he loves the rides.
Yeah,
Like
see,
he
that's
loves
I
this.
feel like I'd miss out on the cruise. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So the ship has like a water, like water ride, which is pretty fun, right? But
yeah,
that's the main like
not the
ride.
same as going to
Yeah.
the parks. Like,
But when you go to the parks, and then we had never been to Disney World before. We did land a
yeah,
lot.
I'm actually surprised that. I mean, I get why y'all do Disneyland. Like, I get the appeal. It's cooler, it's smaller, all that. But
Yeah,
shows y'all are such Disney people.
yeah,
I hadn't
yeah.
been like Disney World yet.
Well, because I wasn't mentally prepared for it yet, because it's just huge,
Yeah,
right?
a
And
lot of
and
wine.
we went,
It's a ton of wine.
yeah, and it is huge. Like, well, like just to get from one park to another park, it's like a 15-minute drive. It's like
Yeah,
the whole Disney World's like the whole landmass that they have. It's like the size of Katy almost.
yeah, yeah. Like
It's
a whole
crazy.
like city. Yeah, it's.
Yeah, it's insane, right? So,
But see,
but
now you know why we spend so much money and we stay like, right by the park and we're on the monorail and all the like
yeah.
I don't we it's so because it's easier to get around.
So we have these shirts made. So I wore it again, and and so I'm walking around with the shirt, and everybody's just like cracking up when we're like hanging out, and then they see me, like in line or something. They read my shirt, they start cracking up. It's because my shirt's like it says like most expensive day ever.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, yeah, And then
It-
my daughter had a shirt. She's like, I'm just here for the snacks,
yeah.
And then so she
Yeah.
just wants to like,
And then
yeah, because she,
Tina had one too, right? It was like best day ever. So when
yeah.
next to each other, it's hilarious because it's like best day ever, and then it's like
So
expensive
so
day.
that shirt was actually my son's shirt from before.
Oh, how funny.
So we recycled. We wore these shirts
Yeah.
last time, but my son grew so much that
He
he
had to.
wore Tina's shirt, and then Tina wore his shirt.
Oh, that's hilarious. They
Yeah, so we have pictures of them like flip flopping, but he's like taller than she is now. It's like crazy how much he's
that is
grown.
crazy. I know
Yeah,
it's that day's coming for me. I mean, it's probably
I
gonna be a
know.
couple years, but my son will be there soon, I think. But
Yeah,
anyway,
but
well,
yeah,
welcome back from vacation and all of your Disney adventures. We are not going on vacation until end of July, so
yeah, we're not.
hiatus. So
So Tina's already like talking to our friends about trying to book another cruise or something, right? And they're like, you guys want to go in October, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going anywhere for like a year
yeah,
because
you're
this
like, I
trip
got
was
to
so
put my son in a really expensive new school. Yay!
yeah.
And I have a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so broke now. I'm like, okay, let's like
Exactly.
regroup. Let's get back to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm same way. Like, let me just work to pay for that next vacation. Here we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to maximize my time with my kids while they're still little.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I get that.
Um,
The magic at Disney, especially like
yeah.
fate.
Because they're going to grow out of it,
No.
Anyways, so back to episode 3. We talked about from the candidate side, interviewing and resumes and how to show up to be your best version. We talked about from the client side how to hire smart, how to actually screen for the right things and behavioral based questions and things like that. So now you have them in the door, you have the offer accepted, and then now they're starting, and now what, right? So this episode is about what you do after you've got them in the door. So we're going to be going over like leadership, training, development, and how to assess if things don't work out. What do you do? What do you do at that point? So that's kind of what this episode is about. So we'll just kind of get to it. So the first thing, you hired somebody, right? So now let's define kind of what a good leader looks like, right? So a lot of these people will have like a supervisor or a manager title, and their job description will be to manage a team, right? So tell us, Ashley. So then, in your definition or from your experience, how would you define a good manager versus a good leader? Is it the same? Is it different? And if so, what are the differences?
Okay. Well, I would say that a manager, a lot of the definition of manager, right, can mean a couple different things, but it could be managing the work or managing the people or both, right? And in a lot of cases, it's both. So the thing is with a manager, the main job of the manager to the corporation, to the executives, to the top of the company is to keep the train not like running down the tracks, right? Efficiency, productivity, output. That's what kind of, the ivory tower cares about, right? However, what a lot of people don't realize is that if you don't have the right people in the right seats and those people start to lose motivation or those people start to like not be happy or not get along or a number of things that can happen when you're on like a team full of people, then that train can very quickly get off the tracks. Right. So it's up to the manager now to not just manage the day to day, like things continuing to be moving, but it's up to them to lead the team in a way that the team, can be successful. Right. So to me, like some examples, right, is a manager drives employees, meaning I need this by Tuesday at, into business, where a leader is going to coach the team. Yes, they're going to set those KPIs and those expectations. They're going to tell them when things have to be delivered, but they're going to do it in a way that it is a we and we're all working together. And here's how here's the why and here's the how, not just the doing, right? Also, a lot of times the manager came to that position because they know how to do the job. They in a lot of companies, they work their way into that position because they were so good at their job. So they know how to do it, right? But it's way different to know how to do something than it is to show or teach. And teaching and mentoring is not an easy thing to come by. Like it's not always innate, right? But I think a lot of managers, they are nervous to we see this a lot, and I know that we talk about this a lot, this generational thing of like boomers versus millennials versus Gen Z. But I bring it up a lot because it really is a thing. Like boomers are starting to leave the workforce. They're starting to retire. They're at that age. And so they're taking all that knowledge with them. But I think that managers in that boomer and millennial space are a little bit nervous about that transfer of knowledge because they think, well, then that person's going to take my job, right? They're going to replace me if they do it better. But I think managers got to get out of that mentality and realize that, like, one, you know how to do it. So why not teach them your way? Because, that's beneficial to the team as a whole. But also, they may bring something to the table that you never thought of, and it's a collaboration. And now you just got even better as a team. And as the leader of that team, now everybody wins, right?
Yeah.
So,
And then on that, like if you think about like football, right? There's the coaching tree, right? And then they kind of talk about like the Shanahan coaching tree, and all these amazing coaches came from that tree. They were his assistant coaches or, running backs coach or whatever. And then now all of them are like head coaches somewhere, right?
that's pretty
Even though,
if you ever
yeah,
look
and,
at the actual
yeah.
breakdown.
And even though they're all amazing coaches themselves, it actually, the Shanahan, it still kind of comes from the tree, right? So they're like, yeah. So even if they become better coaches than you, credit still goes to you for being that leader.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
So in the corporate workplace, a really good leader should be happy when one of their employees outgrows their job and becomes a leader in another department.
right.
That should be your goal.
Absolutely. Well, and that kind of segues me to like another one, which is like, being managers will continue. It can go both ways. They can either assign blame, meaning like, hey, you did that wrong, or they can take credit. We see that a lot too, where a manager will, go to an executive meeting and they're bringing like, an update about the team, and then they're talking about all the successes they've had, and they're not talking about the we. They're talking about how I did.
They like you're saying they steal their team's credit.
I did, etc.
Yeah.
So, they steal the success from, the team, one, or they assign blame if something didn't go right. They have to sit in an executive meeting and explain why something went wrong. well, Judy didn't turn this in on, what else? And, Susan didn't, whatever. But it's their team. They're the
Yeah.
manager, they're the leader. They should be saying, look, we failed, but
Yeah.
really, I failed because I should have recognized XYZ and my team and done better, you know?
So when I see like good leaders, they actually do the opposite, right? So they outwardly give credit to their team when things go good, and then
Mhm.
when things go bad, they take ownership of it,
Yeah.
right? It's like I
Exactly.
should have been,
Yeah.
I should have, prevented this from happening, and things like that,
And
right?
one for the team really is that's what it means. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what should be happening, right? Um, but yeah, so I think that there are several key things that set a manager apart from a leader. When I do these workshops, like when I do the manager workshops, sometimes like I actually do, because they're very interactive, I do some role plays with that where I like, we draw stuff like out of a hat or whatever. We have people play different types of managers, but the audience doesn't know. And then we have different types of employees and the audience doesn't know. And then we talk about, is that a manager? Is that a leader?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
and it's really interesting to see, like, people start to, because these are typically managers in the room when I do it, they're like, oh, I totally do that. And then they realize
yeah,
it's enlightening because they realize those things about themselves. They're like, yeah, I'm totally that type of manager. Like, yikes. But it's
yeah,
an awareness thing. Like sometimes
yeah, yeah.
you don't know.
Well, and then you kind of learn that by either being told it or through your own experience, right? So I remember when I was doing the Korean festival, right? And when we were first building the
For those
team,
of you who don't know, I'm just going to do a little plug real quick. Yang is kind of a big deal. We have a Korean festival in Houston that it's been around a while, but it started like as a much smaller thing and it's become a really pretty big deal. And it's grown and grown and grown. And also if you are in Houston, listeners, come and check it out because it is super cool.
yeah.
Um,
Well, so it's this October 10th and 11th.
there you go.
Shameless
Real
plug.
plug.
There you go. Right.
But yeah, anyway, but Yang has a lot of
Yeah.
responsibility around. So that's another reason for the hiatus that we're taking is because he's gearing up for that too.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So it definitely has grown a lot. But this was early in the years, right? And I was the first festival director. I was in charge of it in the beginning. Well, I've been festival director for a long time, but this is when I was our first or second festival. And I did the first one, and then I think this learning came from the second festival when uh, I did a lot, right? And then I was just working a lot and doing a lot. I have another story that
Like
I'll
you didn't
share on.
delegate yet, like you were just like,
Yeah,
well, on.
yeah, yeah. But at that time, because I really did a lot. A lot of the ideas were mine at that time, and that sort of thing. I used to say I a lot. I
Yeah.
did this, I did that, blah blah blah, right? And then I remember one of the guys he kind of said, "Is like, dude, you say I a lot, right? Like,
He like
even though."
called you out on it.
Yeah, like, but it is because I really did it, right? It was
Yeah.
my idea. I'm the one that
You
did
weren't
this. I'm the
trying to
one.
necessarily be like ego about it and take credit. You just like were saying
Yeah.
things you had accomplished, but it just,
Well, there is some ego there for sure, right? Because I
yeah.
was like younger and I'm trying to prove myself, all that.
Yeah.
But I remember like he called me out on it one day, and he's like, "Man, you say I a lot," and I thought about it. I was like, "I actually do. I didn't even realize that I was like speaking that way." And then after that, I made a conscious effort to change from a I person to a we person.
Yeah.
Right. And then I can noticeably tell the big shift. Right.
Yeah.
And then the other reason why this was important for me is because the festival is all volunteer. So I don't get paid for it. It's almost kind of like a part-time job. My mom makes fun of me about it. She's like, you're working more for your part-time job that pays you nothing, or your volunteer job that pays you nothing versus your real job, right? But anyways, we're all volunteer based, right? And this was another key learning for me, that really helped me become a better leader is when I was leading the team, like managing the team at the branch, right? I managed the branch. These were paid employees, right? So then
Oh, you're talking
they,
about going back to your like original staff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they had to do what I told them to do, otherwise they get fired. This
It was
was
all
their.
KPI driven and
Yeah.
yeah.
So this was their job and this was their livelihood. But the thing is with the festival team, they're all volunteers,
So they
right?
could just like up and leave at any time.
Yeah. So if I managed them the same way that I was driving my my sales team, they could just up and quit, right? That actually happened one time where because we're all volunteer based and it's a nonprofit, like we need money, right? So sponsorship is one of the biggest things for us, right?
Like
And
going
then
out
I'm
and people like knocking door to door, like, will you
yeah.
sponsor the Korean festival thing?
Yeah. And then and now we have Kroger, right? We're like super lucky to have
Yeah.
Kroger. They're a
You
great
got
partner.
more good sponsor. You're starting to get more.
Yeah. FYI, Kroger, if you ever listen to this, thank you very much. Right. But we have some big sponsors now. But back then we didn't have any because we were brand new, right? So it was just really hard, and we had to,
Had to hustle for those sponsors.
yeah. So anyway, so I assembled a sales team for the festival to help with sponsorship, and then I remember I was giving them KPIs and just running it exactly like my recruiting team, right? And then I was kind of telling them how important it is, and they need to hustle, and they need to make these many calls, blah blah blah. And I remember one guy, like after that meeting, just kind of came up to me and was like, "Hey, I don't think this is right for me," and then he just quit,
I think
right?
about
Yeah, it
I
was
thought
like
this
too
was
much
gonna be
work.
kind of like chill,
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. So then that was kind of like a awakening moment for me. It's like, oh shoot, like I can't, I have to manage them differently
That
or treat them
mentality.
exactly. So then after that moment, instead of being a manager, I became more of a coach. I became more of a motivator. I became more inspirational. So then the things that I would talk about with the team, instead of the like what we have to do, right? I became why we have to do this, why this is important,
Yeah.
why this is good for the community, why you make a difference in the organization and how they make a difference and how much I appreciate them. And, so combined with the speaking, right?
Right.
And then it made me so then once I learned how to do that with the volunteers, I brought that back to my day job,
Yeah.
and then it helped me become an even better leader, with my paid staff, right?
Right.
So that's been my personal story on how I learned how to be more of a leader versus a manager, right? And
That's a good example for that, for sure.
yeah, but there's a lot of people that never have that opportunity to learn it, you know?
Yeah.
People talk about it, but for me, because I experienced it firsthand and I had somebody just walk out on me, right? It was kind of like a awakening
Well, maybe
moment, you
that's
know?
the like wake up call you need to, yeah. And some
Yeah.
managers have those and some don't. Some can go on for like years with like managing the same way and just kind of having like a mediocre team. But as long as like, they're still hitting goals, the company's kind of like whatever. But those are the departments where you start to see a lot of turnover. Because like the work's still going to get done because somebody will just slide into that seat and, keep the work going. But it's not,
Yeah.
but you're never really building anything. You're never really building on that foundation. You're just kind of like, it's like a hamster wheel, you
S-
know?
So so let's just say there is a manager like that where they're having trouble with developing their team. They're having like retention issues, or their team just seems not motivated, right? Like what can those types of leaders or managers do? Are there any tactics that they can do? Are there any like a structure around how they can improve their team? Do you have any tips for those types of individuals?
So, I think that it's what I call like kind of the everyday development. But essentially, the first thing, again, we talked about managers versus, leaders versus managers. One of the things that good leaders do well also is build relationships, right? But building relationships is way different inside of a workplace than it is. Well, it can be difficult in social situations too, but like in your social life versus your work life, relationship building's different, right? Because the rules around it and the boundaries around it and like the types of ways in which you interact with someone in a professional setting are different. So, and trust me, there are managers who cross those boundaries and try to be too friendly, like not in a gross, creepy way, but like
Yeah.
where they're trying to be like, hey, bud, hey, junior, whatever, and it's just like,
Junior, like who talks? Dude, I
hey,
swear,
scout. No, I'm kidding.
I swear, sometimes you totally sound like a boomer, dude.
I do. Well, but because I'm making fun of it.
Yeah.
Um,
So I was watching this. I saw this video about like essentially kind of talking about that, like how do you build relationships, how do you manage Gen Z, how do you kind of bring them into the fold from a team culture perspective, and then ultimately it's just kind of like, yeah, if you're a boomer, like don't be trying to like hang out with them too much because they're not going to want to hang out with
Let's put
you.
a happy hour. You're like, no, I'm good. Like,
Yeah. So ultimately it's just kind of like have more Gen Z around, so then they'll want to be around, just kind of hire more of. And this kind of goes with like A players want to play with A players,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you can't have a team of C players and then expect your A players to want to join your team. You have to have a
Can't have
team
all
of.
boomers and like one Gen Z. They're going to be like, I have nothing in common with any of these people. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was more of a video about like culture building,
Yeah.
right? It's you have to have the culture to attract those types of people. But little tangent, but back to what you're
But
saying.
yeah. So anyway,
All of this
relationship
is about.
building,
Yeah,
right?
you want to build the culture, right? So how do
And
you, yeah, how do
yeah.
you build that
So
type of culture? How do you develop, right?
right. So I mean, I talked a little bit obviously just now about the way in which you try to develop that relationship is different in the workplace versus like the personal. But really what it is about, I mean, obviously in a professional sense, but it boils down to just like with anything in life, it's about proper communication, right? I do a whole series on this too when I do like some of my workshops about, effective communication. Well, what does that mean? And how communication is just communication, right? What makes it effective, right? But essentially, like the one key thing that a lot of people miss isn't actually talking, it's listening, right? So active listening, right? So there's a lot of times that a manager won't pick up on or can't pick up on something that might be going on either with a specific employer or with their team because they're not listening. And it's not like, oh, I'm not listening, literally, right? It's that they're not picking up on certain cues because they may be not having the right conversations, right?
Yeah.
So let's go.
Or,
Sorry, go ahead.
or maybe they're too busy and with their
Right,
own work,
right,
and they're so swamped that they're not in tune with how
right.
the team is feeling, right?
Have to
I
make
have a.
time. I always say that you have to make that time, but like, I mean, not overkill, right? Like we always have these jokes about like corporate settings being like so meeting heavy. It's like the meeting to have the meeting about the meeting, right?
Yeah.
Um, so like, don't make it so that it's like so meeting heavy, but make that very like pointed, specific time with not only the team as a whole, but like on an individual one-on-one basis, right? But when you go into that meeting, have a purpose, right? Like, yes, those meetings sometimes like we all know them, we all know the drill where we go in and it's like, okay, everybody give me your update, right? Where are we at with that? And so, but if you walk into a meeting and you say to a whole group of people like, so how's everybody feeling about the Manhattan project, they're going to be like, it's good, it's fine, right? It goes way back to even when we were talking about interviewing and we were talking about not asking yes and no questions. If you ask close-ended questions like, how's everybody doing, how's everybody feeling about that project, and everybody's like, good, you have to get the juices flowing. You got to get the conversation going, and the only way that you're going to do that is to ask those questions about very specific things. Asking questions about something like a specific that they are working on. Hey Amy, I saw that on Tuesday, I could tell that you came in and you seemed a little frantic. What's going on there? Get people to talk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hear more about what's going on with them.
So that the analogy that I think of is because I have the whole like dating analogy, right, with interviewing and stuff like that,
Yeah.
right? So the analogy that I think of when you say that is about like yeah, it's a stereotype obviously, but with your wife or spouse or with women, right? And then you're like, hey, so are you mad, right? And then the
No, I'm
wife is like,
fine.
no, I'm fine, right? And it's like, well, what does that really
She's
mean,
never fine. She is not fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's like this like looks like a little like map, mind map. It's like, oh, is it fine, really fine? And then if she is, then whatever. But is it she says no, I'm fine, but she's really not fine, and then you have
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like a whole like
Yeah.
men are trying to figure that out, right?
Yeah. Trying to
Um,
read between read the cues, read between the lines. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, what I find a lot of that with in corporate is that managers will ask the questions because they know that they need to ask, right? Like I should be asking my team how they're doing. So then they'll do it, right?
It
But then
becomes like a robotic
yeah,
almost.
but then as you said, they're not really listening. And then a lot of the times it's not because they're bad managers or anything like that. I think most of the time in at least in America with corporate, it's just so busy, right?
Yeah.
They have all their work they got to do. They have to do.
Everybody's a working manager, as I call it.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the hardest jobs in corporate, by the way, is that working manager job, right? And I know a lot of people where they actually don't even want that job. They're like,
They'll get like tapped for a promotion and they're like,
yeah,
I'm good. Because
yeah,
now I have to do all of this plus manage all these people for not a whole lot more money.
yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah, they're
I'll
like, no, thank you.
fund
I'm
it.
fine staying a senior,
Yeah.
senior staff, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I find a lot of times. So I actually have a story about this too. Same with the festival. This is where a lot of my like learnings kind of came from, actually. But I had so this was year 2. Right. So this is our year 1. We had like 1,500 people show up and we're like, yay, that was awesome. And then,
Growing pains also too, like lots of things you learned, I'm sure.
yeah, and then year 2, we moved the festival to Discovery Green, and then we're expecting like 5,000 people, and then we ended up having 15,000 people, right? So we grew from like,
You're
yeah,
from 1,500?
yeah, we grew
That
from
was good
15.
advertising or promotion or something on y'all's part. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, now
You
we
get
have like,
triple, basically.
yeah, now we have like 80,000 people. It's
Well, I
like
know. I
crazy.
mean, but
Yeah.
that from one year to the next, you like tripled, basically.
Yeah. Well, that just kind of shows the demand, right?
Right.
And Discovery Green's a beautiful park and all that stuff,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So anyways, so that year we, it's a huge ramp up. So then from behind the scenes, there was a lot more to do as well, right? So I remember that year we were just really busy. We had all these new ideas that we were trying to do, and we still had a small core team. And for me personally, I would work during the day at the recruiting firm, and then I'd go home and then I'd work like pretty much like all night, just till like 12, 1 a.m., just kind of working on the festival stuff, just whatever, right? And after the festival, huge success. We're all happy. We ended up having a team dinner that night, and we're all celebrating. And I noticed one of the girls was not there, right? And she's one of the main people that really helped out a lot. So then I was like, "Hey, where is she?" And then one of the girls like, "Oh, she was just exhausted, so she went home." Right. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I ended up calling her the next day and just checking on her. It's like, "Hey, how are you doing? We missed you at the dinner, blah, blah, blah." And then she's like, "Oh, just tired." Right. And so then I just kind of know. So I probed. I was like, "Oh, well, hey, you really okay? Blah, blah." She ends up breaking down crying on the call. Right. Right. And then I'm like, "Oh my God, like
You
what's
never
going
want that as a manager, but it happened. It can
Yeah, so I'm like, what is going on? Like, where is this coming from? Blah, blah, blah. And then ultimately, during that whole time, she was just like overwhelmed, right? But she never told me that.
never like said anything. Yeah.
And then I asked her, I was like, why did you tell me? Right? Because I always ask my teams, like, how are you feeling? Blah, blah. And they're always like, oh, yeah, we're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. Right.
Yeah.
But apparently for months, she was like, just overwhelmed and she didn't want to tell me. And then I asked her, why didn't you tell me? She's like, well, I see how much you're putting in. So then I didn't want to, like, how could I say that I'm overwhelmed or whatever when I see you working so hard? Like I have to, work hard, as well. Or I forgot what
if she said something that would make her seem weak or like she wasn't trying hard enough or
yeah, exactly. Right. So, and I'm a very lead by example type of guy, right? So I'm always like, whatever I tell you to do, I should be willing to do it myself, and then that's kind of the leader I was at that time, right? So I was like, I'm asking my team to do a lot, so I was doing a lot, right? So then she sees that, she respects it. So then she's like, well, I see you doing so much, so how can I complain when, you're asking me to help out but you're leading by example, blah, blah, blah. So I should, whatever, right? But me as a leader, I failed to notice that that she was overwhelmed. So then because she kept telling me she was fine, I was stacking more on her plate because I thought she was okay. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then long story short, she ended up burning out. She missed out on the fun dinner. So then she didn't get that high after the festival that everybody else got to experience. And she felt a crash at the end instead. So she ended up burning out. She was great, but I think she helped with one more festival, and then that was kind of it, right?
Yeah.
So that was a big learning lesson for me is a really good leader needs to keep a pulse of your team. Like you always have to know how they're feeling. You always need to know when they feel overwhelmed, not, and that includes with personal life too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I will say just, the only like feedback advice I give though on the personal life thing is that's a fine line to be careful because if you ask somebody, like as a manager, and I'm saying this for a manager's protection, right? If you ask somebody something and they start to tell you, divulge that they have something going on in their personal life, um, and then let's say they spill all of the things, that can get sticky real fast. Like, because like, let's say that they start to tell you that they're having a medical issue, and now, well, no, okay, note to self managers, you would clue in HR at that point because you do not like for HIPAA reasons and all the other things. Like, you want to kind of pass that along, but there's still an obligation and duty as a manager to be compassionate, understanding, lead them in the right direction of who they should be talking to and how they can get assistance and what accommodations can we make. And, I don't think we should ever just assume that if someone is having something personal that's bleeding into work, then that's like a them issue and we should just like brush it on the rug, or a them issue and, you know, don't bring it to work because, it's easier said than done. But that's why I preach all the time, right? On another segment we talked about the workplace accommodations for that very reason.
yeah,
But if
yeah,
you're not talking to your people, you will never know that some people are just very private and very closed off and their communication style is just different than yours. And so then you might not ever know, and they may just silently quit on you and
yeah.
leave. And it has nothing to do with you. It's something else going on. But unless you really can like have a pulse on your team, like you said, then you would never know.
Yeah, yeah. So, like with what Ashley's saying is by knowing some of their personal stuff, you don't pry, obviously, but
Yeah.
if it's divulged and you find out, then yeah, then as a good leader, you can get them the support that they need so that they
Right.
can, work through it and then be successful at the workplace, right? And then I was also kind of referring to like because like kids, that's obvious. Like that they're gonna have a baby, right? Like especially if
Yeah.
it's a female, you see their belly, right? So they're like, oh, they're having a kid, right? But like you just know that once they have a kid, they're probably gonna in the early phases, they're probably gonna be sleep deprived a little bit. They're probably gonna be taking care of themselves a little bit less because their focus is on the baby, right? So self care is gonna go down. All these kind of things. Like you just kind of know it's gonna happen, right? So then just kind of as a leader, maybe you can kind of help them out with pick up the slack a little bit here or there, or kind of manage their workload a little bit, or kind
Or
of talk to them,
to
see if
emotional
they need.
intelligence, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just
Intelligence
or
is
just
good.
asking them if they need support. Be like, "Hey,
Yeah.
are you good with this still? Do you need some backup? Do you need or are you okay?" Because the other thing is we don't want to assume and then take uh good opportunities away from them either, right? Several days later.
Real life audience is that sometimes, we don't leave ourselves enough time. So this particular episode had to be done in two segments. But we did wear the same shirt so that things looking at YouTube would look cohesive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And then I got
And
sick and I was sick for like 8 days. So that's why I sound different. But yeah, here we are. Life happened. And now we've circled back to finish out our segment.
yeah, we were on such a roll too. And then my son just like, "Hey, Dad, you gotta go pick up Alex." Like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay, so just to continue where we were from leaving off from last time, so we were talking about how it's important to keep a pulse on your team, and how a big part of that is as a leader having good emotional intelligence. So you want to continue from the key things from there?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've already talked about, ways to communicate and listen better and look for cues with your employees on things that might be on in your organization and, how to have a pulse on that. But I think, this has become a really hot topic in the last like few years, which you probably heard the term emotional intelligence, but a lot of people don't really know what that means. But there's a lot of studies around perspective, right? And how perspective has a lot to do with how someone is receiving or giving information or communicating. Um, and for a lot of people, perception is reality, right? So, but it's not always the truth. So I think open lines of communication with your team help you to understand where there might be a breakdown in some kind of perception. So if you have transparency and open, regular conversations, you'll eventually learn each other to where like, oh, this employee, you know, is sensitive to XYZ, right? And so then in the next interaction or in your team meeting or one-on-one meetings or whatever, you might have to over explain yourself. Some people, you don't need to give them that much context. So I think you have to look for those emotional cues in people. But that's not always an easy thing to pick up as a manager. And again, we talked earlier about managers versus leaders, right? One thing that sets a leader apart is their ability to mirror and match, right, to their employee. I think what's a really good takeaway audience for a lot of people, if you're new in developing those skills, something that's a really good tool that can help you is to do some kind of an assessment on across your team. Maybe the company does it company wide, but we've seen a lot of companies using surveys or assessments as hiring tools, but I think they're just as important for development tools. And I think it's good to redo them sometimes, like periodically, so that their assessment that you used as a hiring tool in 2 years, they may have changed. So they may have had life events or something. But a couple of things that I feel like a good assessment will accomplish for you as a leader is it can tell you about how an employee likes to be managed, right? So do they like to be micromanaged? Do they need more direction, or are they self-directed? It can tell you things about what motivates them. Do they like to be recognized publicly or privately? Does money motivate them versus words of affirmation? So it can also tell you their communication styles. So then you can try to tweak your style to that style. So I think it just gives you a leg up to use some kind of an assessment tool like that to better connect with your team.
So do you have any recommendations on different like personality tests or team assessment tools or tests that you'd recommend?
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot out there. A lot of people like Insights, is one that a lot of people use. I think that the simpler it is, the better. And I say that because it makes it way easier to then quickly look at it and know, so a lot of them do color gradients. I'm sure you've seen that, like where it's like red, green, yellow, blue. And it's like, I'm mostly red and I'm a little bit blue. And then, so if I can quickly look at an employee's color palette, if you will, then I know, oh, that person's a really strong personality, but, has a little bit of analytical or whatever, and then I can tweak to that. So I wouldn't use ones that are lengthy and complex. I would use ones that are pretty straightforward. I've even been in companies where I see that I think it's kind of cool. You just have to roll it out correctly within your organization, but they'll hang them on their like cubicles or at their offices, and it has like their color wheel or whatever. And then, so let's say you have a meeting with someone that you don't normally meet with, and you walk up to their office and you see that color wheel and you're like, okay, I know what I'm getting into.
Yeah. I remember doing that when I worked corporate, and I forget what colors I was, but
I know I need to redo mine. They have Myers-Briggs is another big one.
Yeah.
Myers-Briggs can be really like myopic, where, some of these other ones are more like high level.
I think the color one is kind of the newer one that a lot of
Mhm.
HR teams are adopting.
Yeah.
There's the is it called like Enneagram or something? Did I say it
Yeah,
right?
there's Enneagrams now that tell you
Yeah.
like, it's like uh seeking, motivating, but like there's different keywords that tell you exactly what, analytical, but it's in order of how you are,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
But your comment about taking it, every so often, even every couple of years or yearly or whatever is valid too, because like for my Myers-Briggs, um, I was like a ENTJ, I think
Mhm.
originally, right? Which
Mhm.
is like very like executive functioning and just analytical and that kind of stuff. But then after I had kids, I think I changed to like an
Yeah.
ENSJ.
Yeah.
Right. So I got a little bit softer, a little bit more sensitive, a
Right.
little bit more higher EQ, right? So
Well, that's
yeah,
why I said like life events can
yeah,
change how you view the world, or view work, or view management, or whatever. So like, yeah, I think it's important. And I think leaders should do it on themselves too,
yeah,
because they would need to adjust sometimes their management style or their leadership, coaching skills to how they've become.
yeah. So like for me, like I'm very like naturally, I'm not very patient, right? Um, so that when you're trying to like coach and train and that kind of thing, it's not a great.
Why can't you
Uh,
just get it? Why don't you understand? Yeah.
yeah, it's a major deficit for me, when I'm trying to train a new hire or something, right?
Right.
Because I'm busy with my stuff. I'm trying to get my stuff done. I got to take time out of my day to train this new hire, and this new hire is just not getting it at the speed that I expect them to get it, blah blah blah, right? So being self-aware of that's my like a bad trait about myself, I have to make sure that I practice my patience and have to remind myself like over and over, like this person's brand new. They haven't been doing this for years. So of course they're gonna, be slower to learn it. Or of course not gonna, or these things that I think are like silly questions. Of course they're gonna ask me these things because they've never done it before. And so I have to keep telling myself
But
this.
having kids probably gave you more patience.
Oh yeah. And
I mean,
especially having a son on the spectrum, man, dude, this guy like I have to tell him like 20 times sometimes,
yeah.
and he's got like major ADHD too, right? So it's just like, he's half the time I have to like, I was like, are you
You can
paying
look at them directly in
yeah,
your
like, are you, and then I'll joke with them, and then I'll be like, hey, like, are you hearing what dad's saying, or are you hearing yang wah 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 wah, like Charlie Brown,
the
right?
Charlie Brown teacher.
Yeah, and then he'll tell me, he's like, yeah, I'm hearing wah 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 wah. And then we'll just joke about it, and then I'll let him go do whatever, and then come back, and then we'll have that lesson again, right?
But how much
Um,
are employees almost like kids? I mean, not that you should treat them like kids. That's not what I'm saying. But like, where, yeah, I mean, employees get busy and they're distracted and
yeah,
have all those similar things. And so sometimes you have to make sure that it registers, and that somebody's not just giving you lip service because they're like, yeah, I got it. And then they're like, oh no, what did she just say?
yeah, exactly, because they're busy doing their stuff too,
Yeah.
So some of the times they're lost in their own world, thinking about their project or different stress stuff that their deadlines has coming up, right? And they may not 100% hear what you're saying. They may only
Right.
grasp like the general gist, right?
But
Um,
okay. So what happens when somebody isn't? Like, okay, so we've gone through this life cycle of an employee, right? We've talked about, this whole last 4 weeks or whatever have been about, all the different things you can do to get the right person in the door. And then we've
yeah,
talked about developing and training those people. But you know what? Some employees' life cycle is shorter or longer, depending on, you know, just how they end up
fit,
fitting
right?
in with
Yeah,
the company, the culture
or
fit, but also performance. Like,
yeah,
and that's unfortunate, but and sometimes employees exit themselves for other opportunities and things, and that's fine. You, of course, want to know, hey, is there anything we could have done to get them to stay? And in some cases, it's salvageable. right? It
Mhm.
may not
Yeah.
be no big deal. It may not have been a management style or a culture thing. They just literally got offered more money and they jumped at the opportunity. And maybe you don't want to lose them. They are an asset and you counter and you keep them. That would be best case scenario, right?
Yeah.
But it is rare
Which
that people,
by
sorry, go ahead.
by the way, a counter, like I advise my candidates never to take a counter,
Me too.
right?
I do too.
Well, and then the
It's
reason
a
why,
temporary fix,
yeah,
usually.
exactly. And then kind of what you're talking about from the perspective of the company, right? But a good company, you should be on top of it.
Well, it
Like you
depends on
shouldn't.
how much disparity there is. If the
Yeah, yeah,
person is really underpaid, that would, to me, as an employee, feel like I'm undervalued. So then I would
exactly.
see it as the new company is going to value me and pay me my worth. If it is within a little bit of money, because people, we've seen it, Yang, you and I both know, especially with hourly employees, they'll jump for $1 more an hour.
Yeah, that's
That
not the low.
may already be in that market value within the company they're in now. So, I mean, if it's like a couple $1,000s, hey, company, do the right thing, get them to stay. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, but my what I was getting at was the company. Ideally, you want to be on top of it, right?
Yeah.
So that the candidate, your
Doesn't
employees
have the
don't.
opportunity to even look.
Exactly. So that they don't feel like they're undervalued, right? And then it makes it that much harder for new companies to poach them as well because they're already making market. So then the new company is probably going to be offering, or their band is going to be similar to what they're already making. So it's not going to be worth it for them to make a move,
Well,
right?
some of that goes back to the relationship building we were just talking about. If you're having regular conversations and if it's me, if I'm a manager, I'm asking them straight
Okay.
up, are you happy with, you know, not just are in general, are you still happy at this company or with me as a manager or in this role? Are you happy with the pay you're receiving, the benefits that you get, et cetera, et cetera? And somebody who's comfortable with their manager, it might say, well, I did some market research. I've been in this boat before. I went and did a whole market analysis and took it to my boss and said, here's why I think I deserve, to be considered for an increase. And
Well,
I
that's
was
what
lucky that I worked for a
every
company that actually took me seriously and was like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. And
yeah.
before I could leave, right?
Well, every employee should do that, right?
We're just scared to because people think if I ruffle those feathers
Yeah.
and I ask for what I want, that I'm going to be seen as not grateful or going to be seen as combative or whatever. But I think that's not the case, you know?
It's all about the relationship, right?
Yeah.
It's this is all assuming you have a good relationship with your supervisor, boss, manager, whatever, right? Um, but you want to maximize your opportunity because, like, I'm not gonna like be all anti corporate or job,
Yeah.
whatever, right? However, from what we've seen, you can get laid off anytime, right? That
Yeah.
company's gonna do what's
Nothing's
best for themselves.
guaranteed. People
Exactly.
staying with a company for 20 years nowadays is pretty unheard of. And some of that has nothing to do with happiness of longevity of the company. It has to do with changes that
Yeah,
happen.
yeah. Usually it's because, yeah, they don't want to change. They're comfortable where they are, and it could be their personal situation as well, right? But if you want to maximize your compensation, your salary, studies have proven that individuals who jump ship every couple of years, they maximize their opportunity. And then when you do it earlier on your career, it sets you at a higher like band compared to other peers that had stayed longer
With
term,
the same,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, we kind of went on a sidetrack there. So coming back, so if you have so all the things that we talked about is trying to educate leaders on how to become better leaders, right? Managers on, you know, be a better leader for your team, have higher EQ, all these things on what you can do for your employees. But as Ashley was saying, sometimes, you could do the best that you can do everything that in your power to help them be successful, but sometimes it's just not the right fit. It's not the right person. They're either not the right culture fit or they're underperforming and they're just not getting it. And you've really done everything that you can and you've exhausted all of your resources. So tell us, Ashley, what do you do at that point with an individual like that?
So, I'm a big proponent of, giving people the benefit of the doubt from a training perspective. Um, I really hate this whole 90-day rule that people have. Like, oh, 90 days should be enough time for somebody to be up to speed. And if they're not, like, we'll let them go because they're still in their probationary period and the unemployment doesn't come back to us. And there's all these like nuances, right? But really, if we're being fair, it takes a solid 6 months for somebody to really get their bearings. Because those first couple of months are really not just learning their role, but learning the company and the culture and all that. And then they got to settle into their role a little bit. So I don't even know if you should start performance managing somebody before 90 days. Like, you know, but I think, yes, do that 90-day check-in, have a conversation with them if you feel like there's some things they're still struggling. And don't just make it about them, make it about what they need from you as well. It's a good opportunity to talk about, hey, we've done this training. This is where you're at. We still feel like these couple of things, like maybe we're not quite there. Is there something else that maybe I need to provide? Is there something I'm not, whatever? But it's to put them on notice that, they need to step it up. But you shouldn't be having any kind of conversation that early in the game about exiting them,
Yeah.
unless they do something just blatantly, like they're just not, like they're combative with their peers or something, but if it's like truly performance based, and then so let's say a couple more months goes by, they really are just not getting up to speed, or the technical skills that you thought that they had through the interview aren't really, you're not seeing them in application, right? Then you begin that performance improvement process. The whole goal is to give them the opportunity to improve, right? I think that there is this representation of PIPs is what we call them, performance improvement plan. Most people, if I'm an employee and I get a PIP, I'm like, oh, that's the writing on the wall. That's my cue to go look for another job, or that I'm getting canned or whatever. And the reason why they're seen that way is because too many companies use them that way, but I think that they should be used as more of a tool and a guideline for the areas of focus. And they should include things that the company is going to do and the manager is going to do to support that person to get them through that, whatever goals they need to meet. And if you do that, a lot of people do end up turning it around and some don't, and that's the unfortunate side of it, but you're at least giving them the chance. No one should ever
Yeah.
be blindsided by an exit, right? All of the terminations I've ever done where I've gone through that performance improvement exercise and I've followed it through correctly, I've sat across from them at the termination meeting and they're like, I know. Like, I
Yeah.
know what I needed to do and I know that I couldn't get there and I understand. And they're disappointed. And yes, it affects their livelihood and they're scared about what's going to happen next and all that, but they're not surprised, and they
Yeah.
acknowledge that they understand the why behind it, right? Um, so I think, I think it's just you have to have those difficult conversations, and that doesn't come naturally to most people. I think most people want to avoid conflict at all costs, right? But I think you can't avoiding a problem does not make it go away. So you can't avoid, you have to have the conversations. And if you're having them regularly, they start to feel not as uncomfortable. If they're part of your regular talk with that employee, like your one-on-one meetings and stuff, that they don't feel so like, the employee doesn't feel blindsided and it doesn't feel so like you're attacking something about their performance. It's just part of the conversation from the very
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah. So I'm with you there as far as they should never be surprised. Right. So whenever I had to exit people as well, they always knew that it was coming because kind of like what you said with the 90-day review, the 6-month review, but even more than that, I would check in with them weekly, monthly. Like they always knew where they were at from a performance standpoint. So by the time 6 months came around, and then we had to have that conversation, it's like, hey, if things don't turn around, then we're gonna have to put you on a PIP. So I even had that conversation
Right.
before they got put on
Yes.
a PIP.
Yeah, they should
Then
know that's the next step that's coming. Yeah.
exactly, and then they got put on a PIP. And then, but that's still, as you said, a good team. It's truly a performance improvement plan, not a exit plan,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And as you said, there are a lot of companies that structured the things on the PIP, like they put like impossible tasks that
Yeah.
there's no way that they're going to finish, get this in 30 days,
Well,
right?
that's the other thing. It has to be attainable. And it
Yeah,
and the
exactly.
timeline of 30 days is not fair. I usually do like 60 because that gives them fair time to turn things around.
Yeah, but a lot of companies do that 30 days, right? And then it's like impossible goals, right?
Yeah.
So the employee knows by then it's like donezo,
Yeah.
but
I
ideally
mean, but some
you
candidates don't, or candidates, not candidates, sorry, employees don't even get that courtesy, right? So
oh
I'm
yeah.
glad at least that some companies, even if they know that's their ultimate goal is to exit somebody, at least they're getting some kind of like sort of heads up. So that gives that employee a choice to go look for another job if they want to, or try to turn it around. I mean, it's up to them, but, you know, maybe they can go get another job in that 30, 60-day window.
Yeah.
If you just fire them with no PIP, they're really blindsided. And it really feels like I didn't see this coming and now I don't know what to do.
Yeah, yeah. So the moral of the story there is have regular communication. Obviously set your goals and hold them to a high standard, right? But hold them accountable, but have proper communication, have the difficult conversations if you need to. I did want to circle back because when we were talking before offline, you did have a story about where you work for a company and they didn't work out in a role, but then they were able to, or maybe it was one of your clients where they were able to find them a different role,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
kind of restructure the role to make it fit, and they're still with the company to this
Yeah.
day.
So I mean, that's always an option too, right? Like look for, play to your employee's strength. So the situation you're talking about, Yang, is so I actually, you know, there, not to name names or whatever, but it was this company has the people coming in and they're client facing roles, but they're also like advisory. So there's analytical component. It's a hybrid job. There's an analytical component where they're drafting, like very complex proposals. And then there's the client component where they're upselling the product to the client or, like leading the client through the journey of, being on those products. Well, what they acknowledged was that, the person was extremely gifted in the analytical side and could write these amazing like plans, but just was not as comfortable with like having a book of business. So they just created a role to where they just support, it's more of a support role, but they just now support the other sales leaders from an analytical side. And yes, that did impact their commission potential, but they just upped the salary a little bit to kind of offset that. I mean, yes, there might not be as much potential like compensation upside, but the employee was so much happier not having to be client facing, so then now they're like getting to do what they love and they're happy doing it at the pay they're at and everybody won, you know? And
Yeah.
that's not always feasible, but if you have the opportunity to look around the organization and find something that better fits the person, then you don't have a performance issue.
Yeah.
You just have a fit issue.
And that's also a great example of a leader recognizing the individual's talents
Right.
and figuring out a way to still retain them and still have the company benefit,
Right.
right? Which it's kind of rare nowadays. A lot of people, it's like, this is a circle, round hole. We need a round, peg, right?
Yeah.
This is a square hole. We need a square peg. It's just, they're very like rigid.
Everybody wants
And
somebody to fit into a box, and
exactly.
people don't always fit into a box. Like, that's
Yeah.
why I think it's hard when you look at a job description. Sometimes I look at them and I go, oh my gosh, like, you want all of these skills like in one person. And sometimes you're just not going to have all those things in one person.
Yeah.
It's
Or they're,
people that are that well rounded, right?
yeah. Or there's a handful of people that actually do have all of those things, but then you're gonna have to pay a premium,
Yeah.
right? And at the same time, so they want that plus not a premium. This is what I deal with on a recruiting
Wow. Yeah.
side all the time. They want,
The story of your life. Yeah.
yeah, they want all these things at a bargain salary. I'm
Yeah.
like, That's not gonna exist, bro."
But
That's
yeah, I
funny.
mean, the unfortunate side is that sometimes that's not a possibility. Sometimes the person just isn't working out, and you have to exit them, right? So I think when it comes to that, the important thing is to have done your due diligence from the very beginning. Because I think the worst thing you can do is fire someone without enough cause. That's where you get into trouble, right? Because if you let somebody go and they are blindsided and you didn't have enough really like material things to show for that, they could come back and there could be some kind of claim against not just the company, but you as a manager. My manager was discriminatory because XYZ, right? And maybe nothing you ever did was discriminatory, but that person, I mean, the fact of the matter, elephant in the room is that people are in protected classes. And there are people out there that can use their protected class if they felt like in any way their protected class was somehow played into the decision to terminate them. They can absolutely use that to submit a claim regarding discrimination. So to avoid that, you want to make sure that you really are clear in all of your documentation and conversations and pips and whatever that it truly was performance based, right?
Yeah.
So, I call it like the 5 W's, but it's the who, what, when, where, why. Like, you just want to make sure that because if you're ever asked later, well, did you tell them that? Well, yeah, I told them that. Well, when did you tell them that?
Mhm.
You know, I don't know, a few months ago. Well, that's not going to be tangible enough. We
Yeah.
have to
You
meet
have to have it.
September, whatever. And this was discussed. And then I had another follow up meeting on whatever. And I let them know that I still didn't see the improvement. And you also need your documentation to be two-sided, meaning it cannot just be, I told them to do this, they didn't do it. What did they say when you asked them? Hey, you know, Joey, why did what's going on? How come you didn't meet this deadline? And Joey's response is important because if he responds that, he just procrastinated, well, that's a problem. But if Joey's response is something that was out of his control, then you can't really hold that against him. You have to show in the documentation that you worked to resolve that roadblock for him. Right. But yeah, so I think it's so important of who was in attendance and when it happened and what was said. And what I tell people too is because a lot of managers give me pushback that, documentation is just too cumbersome, takes too much time. I say, well, have the conversation. Don't make the meeting awkward where you're taking a bunch of notes. And then go back to your desk and type up an email that says, as discussed in our meeting this morning, this is what, we talked about, and making sure we're all on the same page. Send, that's your documentation. You can pull from that later, but you don't have to necessarily like sit there and like take notes in the moment and make it awkward. Um,
Yeah.
but I think documentation is definitely key to the decision to exit. And the other key thing is to really, excuse me, sorry, is to consult with HR to make sure you know what your documentation looks like. If it has holes in it, needs, something's missing, if it was clear enough, what your potential pitfalls might be, that you're not saying the wrong thing in the termination meeting, that you're keeping things about why they're being terminated and not getting into too much like, semantics with the employee. I mean, I do a whole segment, on where I coach people through, exactly how to termination should go down in that meeting, because I think the scariest thing for a manager is when they get derailed by some kind of off the wall question that might be asked in that termination, and it spooks them, and then they start and they say too much or say the wrong thing. So I think always have someone else present with you as well. But yeah, I mean, I do a whole segment on this in my manager training stuff.
Yeah. So just kind of tie it all in together. It's just from the beginning, right? I ideally try to be more of the leader framework, be a leader, not manager. And the best teams are built intentionally, not by accident. They get built by leaders and managers and executives who choose to lead with integrity, and all the patients and all the things that we had talked about here. As far as the key importance, it's the communication skills, right? Or understanding their motivators.
Relationship building, which comes from all those things.
Yep. And then what? And then make sure if it doesn't work out, if you have to have coaching conversations, difficult conversations, make sure you have the right documentation.
I mean, look for a role, again, I think you said it, right? A good leader would try to say, are they in the right seat? I know that's not always an option, but then have them, if you have to transition them out, there's just some key areas you want to make sure that you cover.
Yeah.
And always get advice if you're unsure. Absolutely.
Sounds good. All right, Ashley. Well, today, it was nice to continue back from where we left off, and I'm glad we got it all.
Sorry that the segment was a little disjointed.
Yeah. But once again, we'll have the guide. Yeah, it'll be in the link below for you that'll accompany this episode. And it'll have some tips on everything that we had discussed today. So hopefully that'll help. And then our next episode will be on retention and different retention strategies and how to, now that you've done all this work on bringing them in, training them to, training and development, and then retaining and hopefully growing your business and your team.
And that will kind of close out the series. And then me and Yang will be taking a little hiatus, and hopefully my voice will be back by then. But we look forward to closing out the series with you guys, and for you guys to explore the whole series and kind of see this A to Z of that hiring life cycle.
All right. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye, Ashley.